launched your second book, which is a sequel to the first one. Tell us a little bit about the book and about how this idea came into your mind.
So the idea of the series was basically done through brainstorming and imagination, nothing much. So what I did was I pictured the events into like a story format, and I connected each one of them. So there's some kind of link between it. After that, there is a lot of variety of small elements in each part. So connecting all the scenes together creates a beautiful story, which I did. Moreover, each story has a protagonist and an antagonist. So I had an idea of adding a side character for the protagonist in this story. So I did just that. So there came Lucas, and the main protagonist was Fred. And as the antagonist, I kept Siren Head in the first book, and I decided to leave it alone because one foe was like enough to fuel the whole story with obstacles and challenges. Now, coming to the second part, I added Marvelous as another antagonist because it was really monotonous to include Siren Head as the main antagonist again.
Right.
So, yeah, that's how it came along.
So you mentioned about the characters, right? You mentioned about Lucas. You mentioned about Siren Head. Whenever we are reading a book or whenever we are, looking at a story, we generally think of the protagonist and the antagonist as the two main pillars of a story. So I want to know from you how you conceptualize the character of Lucas. Is it somewhere related to Dev? Is it somewhere coming from Dev? Or is it a character out of complete imagination, especially Lucas?
So it isn't something that comes from my life or real life. I just created it out of imagination because I just wanted to give a side character into the story to not make it like boring.
Yeah.
That's what.
Okay, and how much like Fred's character, do you think at some junctures you put character traits that you have into the character?
Yeah, I did that. I actually portrayed Fred as my own self.
Yeah.
And Lucas was just created out of imagination, as I said before.
Okay, interesting. So, Dev, my next question kind of revolves around this, like it's an extension to the second question only. That when you are developing characters in a story like yours, which is not completely related to the world that we are living in, but is heavily derived from it, right? So, a lot of character traits come from the real life world, and then you kind of develop it. So I want to know from you that when you are working on a novel like this, which is, complete fantasy, out of the world, how do you keep yourself, in that world which you have developed for the characters? And especially being in, the real world also, where there's so much logic, so much of white and black. How do you keep yourself, thinking about the fantasy world that you create?
So basically, I like create a base just to stay in that zone and not escape out of it, because the real world is really it is really easy to escape out of when you're writing a story. And I quite sometimes I did that, and it was difficult for me to get back in the zone. So I used to take breaks, and I used to allow my mind to process what I'm writing, because writing is easy, but writing with logic and connecting the story like nicely is something that is an art. And that's what I learned in writing 2 books. And I don't think I do it anymore. Like, I don't escape out of the zone. And when I'm writing a story, I just focus my mind onto it.
So Dev, when you say that writing is an art and storytelling is an art, I totally agree with you there. When you also think of storytelling and writing, tell me a little about your writing process. How do you, start thinking about a book? How do you go about it? What's your writing process like?
So my writing process includes, like, first, any story needs like a world to happen. Like the story
Yes.
needs a world to happen inside.
Yes.
So I basically create a world. So I do that by taking an example. Say I want a volcano or I
Hmm.
want a plateau.
Hmm.
So what happens is I allow my mind to like explore in countless directions, like going inside of the volcano or building a house on the plateau, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I now know what to do on the plateau. So I start building it in my mind, like building the actual plateau. Suppose a town. So it develops step by step. I put people in after adding houses, and then I like add a bit of texture like greenery and caves and mountains all around, so it doesn't look really boring. um, and the ideas just keep flowing when you have built a base for your world. So I do just that and I write my story.
All right, that's a very interesting writing process. And Dave, we do a lot of writing workshops. We meet so many writers. It's very interesting how at such a tender age, at such an interesting age, you are thinking of your process in such clarity. I meet so many people. I know it's so difficult to develop that clarity over a period of time. And with you, I think at this age you have that clarity in your mind. That's commendable. I mean, that's something you should definitely give yourself a pat on the back for. I think that's an amazing thing to have. When we speak of the sequel, when we come to our book, and also tell everyone the name of your first book, and then you come to the sequel and talk about the mysterious adventure. You talk about what is new in the sequel.
Okay, so answering to the first question you have, the name of the first book is Best Friend's Secret Adventure, and what is new in the sequel? So I basically have introduced two new characters, Luna and Hydra, to kind of give a kickstart to the story. The town they visit is the same. Their surroundings have been given a makeover though by Uncle Brown, the head of the town, and the humongous hole that Fred and Lucas left in the end of the first book is still present. Only that there are goblins that have made a settlement beside the town. Furthermore, there is a new antagonist for the story, which is Marvelous, who is the brother of Siren Head, who had terrorized the world in the first part. Now, there is also a new concept of Gigamils, who are discovered by the squad while they venture through a cave. The element of lava and volcanoes is also minimal because you can also spot a lot of lava and a lot of blood red. That phrase is used quite a lot of times in the first book. So I've kept that minimal, including the underground atmosphere from the first book. So the place where the final battle takes place is kept the same, but the castle of Siren Head is turned into a dungeon. And yeah, that's all.
So, Dave, from what I know, mom and dad at your end have been a crucial part of your editing and your book publishing process, right? So, if mom is around, I would actually like to ask her this question: that when you were listening to a story which was fantasy, just out of the world, what were the thoughts that you had?
Actually, initially, I have not, Dev has not shared the story. The second book I'm talking about. The
Right.
first post when he started, writing. So he kept it secret, and then I guess the final version, the final before giving to edit to you and
Yeah.
Rizina, I just, happened to. I said, now at least you, give me the glimpse that what are you up to, whether it is over or you want to still continue the writing.
Correct.
That time I came into picture, and then I have started reading that book.
Correct.
And so basically this whole idea, the efforts, the imagination is of Dev this
Hmm.
time. And he was very clear, when he was writing, that no, what he wants to do, he is going to, show it to the world.
Correct.
So I really appreciate, how they were conceived the idea and he's presented.
Yes, I totally second you on that. So, one more question, a very fun question, Dev and Divya, is that let's say that writers and editors, when they sit together, there is for sure a war happening, like one between Siren Head and his brother Dev. So, taking that reference from the book, when you sit to edit with mom or when you sit to discuss a story with mom, are there times, Divya, when you guys have this thing that no, this is going to be here in my book, no, this is not going to be here in my book? Like, tell us a fun behind the scene, while you guys were working on the book.
Dave, your turn first.
Okay.
Then I'll say.
So we had a lot of quarrels, obviously, because we are mom and son. So
Yes.
we enjoyed what we did, and it is really memorable to me. But we also discussed where I was going wrong, and she corrected me accurately right there. And I had my own suggestions, so
Right.
she took it respectfully, and she corrected me if she felt that I was wrong. So
Right.
I enjoyed the process.
Absolutely.
For
Divya, what
me,
about you?
for me also, it's a memorable journey. Honestly,
Okay.
that time I was like running short of time and everything. But
Mhm.
as a, what I always perceive is he's my son. I'm going to like whatever he is going to do. But,
Yes.
rather than keeping that aside and read a story as a reader, and
Mhm.
that too of his age,
Yes.
I kept my focus there. And then that time I'm like, Dave, if I'm a kid, I'm not going to like this way, or I am going to enjoy this, part of your story. So
Right.
that way, we have done brainstorming, and obviously with your help, so finally we are here.
No, absolutely. That's such an interesting conversation, because I think what Dave said, that respecting the opinions, that's very important. And what you mentioned, that when you are in midst of a big project, thinking beyond that, this is something that I'm just going to like, that's also very important. That's a also beautiful message to all the parents who will be watching us later. So I think that's really interesting. Dev, when you speak about your book, your thoughts, tell us a little bit about how your friends are reacting to the book. How do you feel in school? What kind of, responses you get from friends, family when you meet them and when they've read the book?
So my friends have always been supportive. Some of them, obviously, who don't like me and who don't like my writing,
Yeah.
they obviously try to take me down, but that does not affect me as much.
Yeah.
And I just let it go because I am what I am and I write beautifully. I know that. So
Oh,
yeah, I
beautiful.
do that,
Yes.
and it is really fun because my teachers also appreciate me a lot. Like
Hmm.
I am basically a teacher's pet and a bookworm. So there are English teachers all around the grade who like me a lot for my writing, especially in tests when I write when I write how I do,
Hmm.
and they actually write my writing a lot. So I've got pretty positive responses from everybody.
Sure, sure, absolutely. I think, one very interesting fact, while you said about, people not liking your work and yet being persistent with it, that's such a big learning for any writer watching you. Because, you've said it in a very casual manner, but that's such an important point that you've made, that, do not get bogged down by negative feedback or criticism. So that's a very important point that you've, added here to the conversation, Dev. On that note, Dev, I would also like to ask you that if, just take an example that a writer comes to you who's thinking of a story, who's just thinking of an idea, what are the suggestions that you would like to give to new writers? Any, wise advice that you would like to give them?
So this actually happened to me in school. I was in a library period, and my classmate was just like he was doing something, and I approached him and I asked, like, I thought he was writing something like a story. So we talked, and he said that he wants to become an author. So I was like, yeah, I am one too, so I can like help you a little. So what happened is I advised him that you have to do this and not the other thing. So basically, what I advise others is just like just let your imagination take over when you write a book or a story, anything, and don't restrict your mind to stay on a singular path. Take different paths and then choose from them. Like, say I think about 100 different things in a day. So at the end of the day, I choose 10 of those 100 things, and then I connect them to make a story. So that's what I was trying to say. And just keep being persistent and going really at it, and put all your hard work. That's all I can say.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's very interesting. I also remember while we were working on the book, you mentioned this in the book itself. It's for the writers to follow their dreams and just stick to it. I think that's a very important, advice that people would take back. Interestingly, when you speak about the world that you've created, or when you speak about writing continuously or consistently, I also kind of understand that you are in school, you have a lot of work from that end as well, and we can go about cribbing on that space. But along with that, how difficult is it to write? That's my first part of the question. And second, how do you kind of overcome those challenges which you're facing for time constraints, or you're facing, regarding balancing both the spaces, the book writing part and the school part? How do you kind of manage it as a teenager?
So obviously, I have school at one side, and I have writing a book on the other side, which is my passion. So I try to balance those things, like doing the homework first and then writing the book. So that's how I manage my time in completing the book. While completing the book isn't the only goal. What I don't write for completing, I just write because I want to. Like, it's my passion, so I really like continuing the book. And obviously, answering the first question you asked, there
Yes.
are like hundreds of challenges that I faced in this book, or the first one.
Yes.
So basically, there are sometimes where your mind is completely blocked and you can't think of anything.
Yeah.
So what I do is I take a break. I sit quietly. I read my own book, and I look back at what I have written, and I go do something else, whatever it is, and I come back with a fresh mind. So that allows me, like, I take a walk or anything, and it allows me to like explore in a totally different area and not get blocked. So that happens several times. So I do that, and yeah, here I am.
Absolutely.
Devanshi,
Yes,
I
yes,
would
Divya.
like to add up what he says. Definitely, it is a challenge. That is why the time span he took this time was a bit more than what we expected.
Right.
But as he mentioned, it is his passion. So I seriously want to mention that after doing that hard work, morning school, getting up by at least 6 o'clock, not later than that.
Yes.
And then at night, at peace, when everyone is sleeping or playing games on mobile or anything like that, he is using that time for this passion.
Right.
So basically, the balancing happens that because I can't allow him to neglect studies, because
Truly.
obviously he is now in a higher grades.
Yes.
So he has sacrificed that time.
Yeah. Dev, that's an appreciation for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Dev, you mentioned a very interesting point. You mentioned that you don't write to complete a book. I want you to elaborate on that. What's your reason for writing then? What's your motivation to write?
So when I first started, I just had an idea, like, just to write whatever I want to, and that was when I decided, like, when mom took it seriously and when we contacted Resina ma'am, I then realized like, it is really serious and I should totally follow it. So as you said that there are mental blocks where you can't
Yes.
think of anything. So that's when I like took a break, and just writing for the sake of it doesn't really mean anything, because you can write a book for the sake of it, and it will also come as an outcome. But the outcome won't give you as much happiness as it gives when you write it with a whole heart. So this is what I did, and the book hasn't arrived yet, but I know that I'll like burst into tears when it comes, and
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm proud of myself.
Oh, yes, you should be, because you've done something that you should be proud of yourself. And trust us that we are equally proud of you. When we work with you, it's been, a very, I would say, a very lucky space where I and you have sat together and worked on the book. So I absolutely feel the same. I feel, the pride when we talk of the final story. So absolutely, Dev. When you kind of write for readers, what are the 5 things that you'd like to give your readers from your books? What's your 5 takeaways from this book that any reader can take back?
So when I first started writing, I did not know what is writing a book like. So
Yeah.
in on the journey, I learned many things. So I'll picture it into 5 different parts, as you said. So first
Mm-hmm.
of all, the art of creating scenes and ideas. That is like the crucial part of writing a book, because
Correct.
without ideas and scenes, you can't really write anything. So
Hmm.
that is what I learned. And once that is done, the second thing is that the ideas must be transformed into something known as animations, because it is really essential to like let the story flow in your mind like a movie, because it will essentially help you and the reader to understand it better, because once you know that you want to keep it the way it is flowing in your mind, it will be easier for you to write, and you can write fluently. Now, the third thing is connecting two different scenes together, unreal scenes together. So, suppose there are two scenes and they are nowhere near similar, like North Pole and South Pole, and connecting those scenes is truly one of a kind. And that is what I learned, that it is really difficult to do it, but once you've got the hang of it and you do enough practice, it is really easy, and it is really fun connecting those two scenes. Now, one can also learn about describing major battles in their books and stories, because without a proper battle, like without a proper description of the battles, the story is kind of incomplete, because there is no thrill and there's no imagination that is being in the book. So it is always top priority for the writer, because the reader must fully be immersed into the story, as if they are inside of it and they are like a character.
Fair.
And lastly, writing must also involve some kind of artistic explanation. So
Mm-hmm.
that gives birth to illustrations, which I think that was the most fun part in my writing journey. And drawing essential parts of your own story will always help the reader to understand better. And budding authors can definitely take this back as pro tips.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's amazing, Dev. So, I think, Dev, on that note, thank you so much for being part of this interview with us, this conversation with us.